When I made this channel, the goal was to provide useful and interesting content for longtime players and tutorial content for new players. I've been too focused on the former so far, so here's something for the beginners. Also, please note the timestamps in the video. I'm covering the absolute basics first, and I encourage you to watch these segments as well, but if you feel you already know these parts and want to get to the psychological and reaction training segments, the timestamps are in the description, or you can scroll over the time left in the video. Anti-airs are crucial at all levels of play. Your opponent's most damaging combos will usually start from jump-ins. And just blocking the jump in is not ideal, since the opponent basically got in for free and now they're a plus right in your face. So even in a game like Street Fighter V, where anti-airs are typically weaker and less costly for the one jumping, it's still extremely important to not let your opponents jump for free. So let's tackle the first question. What do you anti-air with? This obviously depends on your character, but it's not hard to figure out. Most anti-air normals and specials have animations that intuitively imply that they are anti-airs. If the attack moves around or above your character's head, you can probably anti-air with it. If you can't figure it out on your own, just research your character or reach out in the community. One thing you might hear from some players is if your character has a dragon punch, you should always anti-air with it. I wanted to address this because it's actually just wrong. Case in point, Akuma here has a dragon punch and his back fierce both serving as anti-airs. The dragon punch deals more damage and has invincibility, so it'll be more consistent and can be used in tighter situations. We'll touch more on this later. The back fierce deals less damage with no invincibility, but the hitbox is high above Akuma's head. It's very difficult to beat this button, even with deep jump-in normals. But more importantly, it's special cancelable, so you can get similar damage to the dragon punch, but with more corner carry and okizeme. Akuma is one of many characters with a choice to make for his anti-airs. He has a safe, consistent option, but he gets more rewarded for his technically riskier option, but that option is also consistent. So why would you ever use Dragon Punch if his back fierce is more rewarding? This circles back to the reason some players think you should always Dragon Punch. Invincible frames are extremely useful when anti-airing, and these invincible frames allow you to anti-air in tight situations where a normal anti-air will not work. For this next example, we'll use Sagat.
Hey, I was waiting for you.
Sagat is similar to Akuma in this area as he has a dragon punch with invincible frames. Technically he has two that cover different angles. And a normal anti-air that lets him get more conversions. So Sagat is also more rewarded for using his normal anti-air compared to his dragon punch. So how do you know when to use which one? The answer depends on the situation and what you were doing when the opponent jumped. Let's look at some hypotheticals. Here, both characters are in their round start positions. For the first example, I'm going to throw a slow tiger shot. Ken will block it, and then I'll throw a fast tiger shot. Ken will jump over the second tiger shot. And I'm going to try to anti-air with my stand roundhouse and get a conversion. So that worked out perfectly, but watch what happens when we do the exact same sequence, but we throw the fast shot first and the slow shot second. This also serves as a peek at the nuances of the Fireball game, but the short of it is recovery animations. Let's examine the first clip again. Because of the Fireball's slow travel speed, Sagat is almost completely recovered by the time it hits Ken. As you can see here, I'm plus 16. If you don't understand frame data, don't worry about it for now. Just remember that number. This is the last frame of my second Fireball's recovery. Notice how high in the air Ken is, and that I'm plus 14. Again, don't worry if you don't know frame data, but just remember these numbers for each situation. Now for the second clip. Here, because of the faster fireball speed, I'm only plus 10 when I was previously plus 16. And Ken makes it this far into his jump before I'm fully recovered, and I'm only plus 8 compared to the previous plus 14. Here you can see the comparisons more easily. So what is Sagat supposed to do in the second scenario? Yep, just Dragon Punch. Note that in the second scenario, even if Sagat's normal was fast enough to anti-air here, it would lose to any jump-in attack Ken used at this range. So it's not just a matter of speed, Sagat needs the invincible frames to punish this jump-in. I couldn't find a convenient way to set Ken to perform an attack on his way down just with guard recovery settings, but I think this is pretty straightforward. So to recap, normal anti-airs usually have higher payoffs and are perfectly suited to punishing jumps if you are free to use them, but if you are recovering from using a neutral poke or throwing a fireball, you might need invincible frames depending on the situation. Now that we know what to anti-air with, how do we train ourselves to anti-air in live matches? When I see a new player asking how to train anti-airs on social media, it doesn't take too long for someone to recommend this exercise. Just setting the dummy to jump in with their best normal. I have some hang-ups with this method, but I'll cover its pros before I get to the cons. First, this is more helpful for newer players that need help getting more comfortable with the visuals of the game, but this is a very minor point. Second, when learning a new character, this is the best way to find out what angles they can anti-air, particularly if they have multiple anti-air options but cover different angles. And that's it for the pros, but let me be clear, a lot of players use this exercise and then go into matches and anti-air just fine. Some players have no problem trusting their reactions and don't need the exercises I'll recommend later in the video. So if you are one of these players, it's very likely that you would have figured out anti-airing with very little work either way, and it actually has very little to do with this method. I used to think my issue with this method was it was too much anticipation and not enough reaction, but I was off target. The problem is the lack of tension. Reacting to something is much easier when you anticipate it, but that creates tension, which isn't happening with this exercise. The problem is my mental stack is not strained at all because I only have to worry about the jump, and a competent opponent simply isn't going to play this way. Let's use this match for example.
Round one. Fight.
Mission complete.
So the main issue with the previous exercise is it's basically designed for you to succeed, and a lot of players that only train their anti-airs this way end up complaining about how their consistent anti-airs in training never carry over into live matches. This method does nothing for your reactions, so how do you train anti-airs? It's my belief that you can't train anti-airs without training something else at the same time, because if you only train anti-airs, then you're just waiting for the jump. If you take the previous exercise and make the jumps less frequent, that's a little better because you aren't just anti-airing in a cadence, but you are still just waiting for jumps with no other pressure on you. Here is my recommendation. Using playback recording, select Action Record Settings and pick two things to work on. For this example, I'm going to play Minot with Ryu as my opponent. The first recording will be a fireball and the second will be a jump-in attack, because I want to work on reflecting fireballs and anti-airing. Be sure to turn off the display recording playback info so the recording won't be visible during your training. Notice how I'm getting hit and using my V skill when I see a jump thinking too much about the fireball? Even with just one addition to my mental stack for the training method, it's significantly harder because my focus is split and I can fail. The exercise isn't designed for me to succeed, it's designed to demand a split of anticipation and reaction. There's tension, and I have to adjust to it. I could have easily picked a character I'm more experienced with, like Cammy, and EX drilled through the fireballs and DP'd the jumps and only shown the successful attempts in editing. But even then, my success rate wouldn't have truly been 100%. But it would have looked a lot better than my Monot footage. I've given myself a lot of room for failure, because that is the tension that's present when I fight a human opponent. I recommend starting with 2 recordings, but as you progress, you can add more to make the dummy resemble a more realistic human opponent, like dashes, the character's best pokes, or just walking. The final point I want to touch on is the psychology. This isn't really that deep, but a lot of players are terrified of jump-ins and freeze up when their opponents jump. Just looking at the replays of the players that I know personally that have mentioned this issue to me, it seems to be a lack of trust in their reactions. They actually do react in time, but it's what they do when they react that's the problem. They see the jump, get nervous and cling to their block, and try to anti-air second. Jumps are 100% reactable even for humans on the slower end of reaction times. There is time to anti-air. There is not enough time to doubt or second guess. There is just enough time to anti-air. You simply have to trust your reactions, and this has to be done the hard way, through trial and error. If you have this issue, I want you to try this. Whether it's training mode or in matches, when you see a jump, attempt the anti-air even if you think you reacted late. You aren't going to solve this problem by staying picky about when you anti-air. You will lose matches, but losing is going to happen regardless, especially if you do nothing about the issue. The primary goal is to practice trusting your reactions and get rid of the hesitation. You can try in training mode first, but don't make it exclusive to training mode. Another big problem players may not realize they have is not bringing their training practices into live matches. If you don't want to lose in ranked, play in casual matches or in Battle Lounge. There isn't a number of hours in training mode that will give you a passive buff to never miss an anti-air again. You have to work on it where it counts. That's all I have for now. This video has gone on way too long already. I really wanted to cover everything in around 8 minutes, but I don't like speaking over my examples most of the time because it makes it harder to break things down, but I'll have to work on my process to make these videos more digestible. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.